Betting, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Bet with the Best podcast. Its mission is to explore better ways to bet on races, to seek out new, successful players, and to boldly go where no podcast has gone before. The Bet with the Best podcast is sponsored by Amwager, an ADW built by horse players for horse players. Speed, power, and ease of use are at the core of Amwager, designed to give players the information and tools they need to quickly make anything from a simple win bet to a complex, structured superfecta or pick 5 wager. When you combine that with data and pool updates that are up to 60 times faster than the competition, Amwager is the clear winner in wagering on races online. Those are just a few of the many special features that Amwager has to offer, along with live video and race replays, free, integrated form-to-win past performance information, conditional wagering, and true odds, which are a prediction of off odds based on all available pool data. That and much more. Amwager is licensed and operated in the U.S., and best of all, they will actually pay you to play. If you sign up now and deposit and bet $150, you will earn a $150 lump sum bonus. So there is no reason not to give Amwager a try. If you want to bet with the best, then you need the best tools to wager with. You need Amwager. Welcome to episode 19 of the Bet with the Best podcast. This week we are doing something a little different. I have a special guest, Emily Gullickson, a racing analyst from Optics EQ and Hawthorne Racecourse, and she's going to provide us with a detailed analysis of the horses in some selected races, and then we're going to follow that up with a detailed discussion about how to effectively bet her opinion. So we'll see how it goes. This is something new. We're going to give it a try, and I want to welcome Emily to the show. How's it going, Emily?
It's good. Thanks, Chris, for having me. I know this, like you said, it's a little bit experimental. I actually thought I was going to be on your other show rather than this one until I heard the intro. So a lot of fun. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, the other show, the reason we're doing this show is Scott Carson, my partner in crime on Sport of Kings podcast, is not available this weekend.
Right. That's why I thought I was subbing.
Yeah. So you are, but I'm doing it on my Bet with the Best podcast, which is really focused more on betting. So we're going to get your opinion on the race, but I want to spend more time talking about the betting stuff than we typically would on Sport of Kings. So that's what we're going to try to do. And we'll see how it goes. Both of us, I know you're a little bit, I'm not quite sure what I'm doing. And I know that probably has translated into a little bit of nervousness on your part, but let's give it a shot. And we're going to start with a race on Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. Black Friday, I guess is what we call it now. And we're going to look at the Del Mar 7th race. It's a stakes race going 1.5 miles on the turf, the Hollywood Turf Cup. And before we get started on that, I thought maybe you could spend a little time just telling us how you, what your handicapping approach is, the tools you use, and kind of how you go about it. Gave you a chance to plug Optics EQ a bit. So why don't you just describe a little bit about, how you approach the handicapping side?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, I'm an analyst for Optics EQ, also a partner, and that's what I use for handicapping. And Optics has really developed, it really goes hand in hand with betting and handicapping as a whole, because you're looking at the horse, you're looking at the picture of the race, not just individual pieces of the puzzle. So the development with Optics EQ is looking at pace, class, speed, and form. And that's typically when you're handicapping, those are the factors that you want to be looking for. Now, where you're going to find edges in terms of betting and translating to have that edge on the public is having some information that's not necessarily in the public space. So a lot of that has to come down to form. a lot of times people aren't taking the time to watch races or to do form cycle analysis because it takes a little bit longer. And it's close to impossible to do by looking at the racing form and just that kind of static past performance. That's why people watch replays, they take notes, because it gives that other picture of the puzzle. Optics plot can give you a quick visualization of the race shape to try to see, are there any extremes? Are there any, a horse that has a pace advantage from the front end from off the pace, or looking at what kind of horse can get a trip based on their running style. In terms of speed figures, a lot of times people are looking at speed figures in terms of which is the fastest horse in the race, and not in the sense of, is this horse fast enough to win this particular race? Class is key, especially as we're starting out with a graded stakes race, because it's a higher level race. $200,000 purse could be higher depending on the circuit. And you need to know what type of horses are able to compete at that level. You do a lot in other sports, like making that transition from junior varsity to varsity. Sometimes players don't make that transition and they're unable to compete on class, and horses are similar. So for Optics EQ, those are the tools and those are the things that I'm looking at when handicapping a race. Did I lose you?
So you pretty much have the full suite of all those factors. You can get all that from Optics EQ. You look at the plot, the notes, all the other aspects of optics. That's the tool that you're leaning on when you handicap.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of also knowing from that information what the public is looking at. They're going to look at oftentimes some running lines and some numbers that are going to make a horse look favorable, and knowing how that horse ran that race, what was going on at that time. Was it a trending hot barn? Did that horse have a track profile? Was there 6 other horses in the race that had significant trouble? All those things that you can't see on paper that the public is going to gravitate towards that might look a little bit better. Or from the opposite side, a horse that just might look worse on paper for whatever reason, wasn't in the right time and place, through whatever trend. And you're going to get a lot more pieces of the puzzle than necessarily the public, and that can give you the edge in terms of playing.
Well, great. So let's start with this race. First of all, just looking at it overall and like the plot and stuff, is there anything that stands out in this race in general, as in terms of the race shape or anything before we start?
This is, I would say, 12 furlong marathon race, and the pace is always kind of tricky, and you're also dealing with a different type of sample size, right? A lot of horses that haven't run at this distance or have only run at the distance once, things like that. So it's tough in terms of trying to assess pace from that visual standpoint. Like surface distance plot, for example, there's 5 of the 8 runners that don't have that surface distance data to plot. So it's tough to kind of go off of that. So I use a little bit more kind of running lines, form, basically how that horse is run, and then try to kind of put it together. But again, a lot of the time too, in these type of races, it will come down to how the riders want to ride the race.
Yeah, definitely. These longer turf races can be very tactical in terms of what the riders decide to do. Any one of them can take the lead if they want, probably going a mile and a half. It's just what's the rider intent. All right, so let's talk about it. And I want to kind of go through it, each horse, because I think really to do a good assessment from a betting perspective, you kind of have to consider every horse. You don't want to rush through it and just look at a couple horses. So, and that's one of the things I like about the analysis that you do. Typically you're going through and talk about every horse. And so we'll do that, and we'll just go in post position order. And we'll start with the one horse, Francesco Clement, who probably will be the favorite. It's not the favorite on the morning line, but I'm guessing it will end up going off as a post-time favorite. Maybe tell us a little about what you think about that horse's chances and why you feel that way. Yeah,
before I start talking about this horse, I just want to, in terms of like playing a race, you talk about like the whole analysis and why you want to look through each horse. This is something like kind of John Doyle helped kind of make me understand in terms of playable races, that a lot of the most playable races are races that you can start eliminating horses, right? You can really start to simplify. And so I use that in my process in terms of playing. If I can eliminate so many horses out of the race. We, kind of use on Optics Focus that toss keyword or, prime, things like that. Horses that you can eliminate helps in terms of your betting process, just clears out a lot of the noise. So we were talking a little bit before. I really wasn't that interested in this race, and we were trying to figure out what to do. And talking through it, I actually got a little bit more interested in this race, particularly because of this horse, Francisco Clemente, who I think is fine. And I definitely agree. We talked about that a little bit. Probably is going to be shorter than the morning line favorite, Speaking Scout, based on the connections. All around, Chad Brown does well with those type of horses. Seems to kind of have that hype coming into this race. But there's a couple things that I find negative at a short price. And I really want to make that clear that it's a negative at a short price, because the things that I could find negative on a horse at a short price, I wouldn't mind so much on a horse that's 15 to 20 to 1, right? Because you're getting that price compensation for not having those deficiencies, but you're picking horse in a favorite. So Francisco Clemente, this horse, in terms of optics notes, the last 5 races, we didn't have trip notes for the first 2, but those last 5 races in optics notes, every race the horse breaks slow. So that already, to me, is a horse that has gait issues. He was able to overcome it last out with a little bit more ground. It was in non-winners of one allowance, a lower optics figure range than today. But that's a liability. Anytime a horse has a pattern of breaking slow, that could be something that's a knock at a short price. In terms of a horse doing something new, this horse is probably fine to go an extra furlong. I'm not going to knock that distance change too much, but it is something that's new. I would say more than that is the class rise. This horse is going to be stepping up in class to graded stakes, and horses can certainly do that. But the things that I look for, or that we kind of put into optics, is you want to be able to see with the optics grade, which gives an overall grade, a performance rating for that particular race and that particular level. So when a horse is running in a non-winners of 1 allowance, non-winners of 2 allowance, you want to be seeing them just absolutely dominate that group. B+, maybe an A-, but typically that B+ will suggest that the horse can take that rise up in class. So when I'm looking at Francisco Clemente and I see the B- slog in the slog is slow out of the gate in the September 21st race, and then I see on October 19th, the horse earned a B, which is a winning race for the level, but that's not a type of race that's going to win a graded stakes race. You'd have to project this horse is going to have to move forward quite a bit. And with that projection, you're going to want price compensation. So as I'm kind of looking at this race, if I'm expecting this horse to be a favorite and people kind of gravitating more towards connections, then I think this could be a spot that there could be some separation and becomes playable.
So how would you rate that horse? Do you still think it's the most likely winner? Is it just one of several contenders? How would you rate it?
I mean, if I think that this horse has some vulnerabilities at the favorite, I wouldn't use this horse at all in like the multi-race sequences. I'd have to take this horse on, because if I'm thinking that this horse is going to be favored, then one, it's probably going to create some opportunities on the win end elsewhere. But in the multi-race, I would let this horse beat me. I think he could certainly win, but might not also at the same time.
So you would say, it sounds to me like, from a value perspective, you definitely don't like this horse. From a likelihood of winning, it's probably one of several contenders. Would that be fair? No?
I mean,
you don't think it has any chance to win? You would just...
I do, but if we're talking from a playable standpoint, my opinion would be I would try to beat this horse.
Right. Not about betting.
So I'm not... So do I think it? So, I mean, you're asking like if I'm handicapping this race and I'm doing 1, 2, 3, 4 picks, sure, I could put him fourth and like have like a saver. But if I'm like looking at this race in terms of horses that I think are contenders from a playing standpoint, I would not be on this one.
Yeah. So I'm asking a third question. Not trying to say is there value in this horse, but in terms of likelihood of winning the race, totally price independent, is he one of the more likely winners?
I'd give this horse like a 20% chance, so 4 to 1.
Okay, so
is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay,
I'm just trying to get a sense for what you think the chances are of winning as we go through all the horses, and then we'll talk about the value part. But clearly, you think this horse is going to be an underlay. Yeah. I get that. And
if he's 4-1, he could be playable. Yeah. He could be a contender all of a sudden. All of a sudden, this guy's a contender.
Well, yeah, I mean, right. So that's what I meant. So just if you didn't know what the price was going to be and you're just rating them as contenders, he's a contender. Based on what you anticipate the price to be, you think he's going to be a big underlay and you wouldn't use him, but you do think he's a contender is all I'm trying to get at. I'm just trying to get at how many contenders there are in the race. All right, great. So right now, all of a sudden, to me, based on what you've said so far, this race starts to get interesting because this horse, I think, is going to be the favorite. So let's hear what you had to say about the other horses, beginning with the 2, Yes This Time, who also is cross-entered in a race on Saturday. I don't know which one he's going to go in or if they're allowed to. Does he have to scratch? Like in New York, he'd have to scratch in this race. So I don't know if he's going to go or not. That's just a heads up. The 2 may end up scratching out of this race.
Yeah, let's pretend that the horse is in the race, just because I'm going to kind of make it quick. I don't think this is a horse that maybe they're going to try to be forwardly placed, but I don't think it's a horse that's necessarily quick enough to get the lead, giving up freshening. And if I'm looking at this horse in terms of, this horse has run in graded stakes in the past, did win the Kent back in 2021. That was as a 3-year-old, and really hasn't shown that much progression. Number-wise, probably the best race was the race at Kentucky Downs, which was, $500,000 race, a little bit of class. But overall, the grades for those efforts, the B-, C+, is not a horse that's going to be in a contender spot. 15-1, one you could probably use underneath.
So what would you say his ceiling is? Hit the exacta, hit the try, hit the super, or what would you put the ceiling on that horse?
Probably more in like the try super.
All right. So,
yeah.
All right.
Based on the grades. Yeah.
So not a win contender, not impossible to maybe get in the try or the super. All right. Great. So let's go on to the third horse, Luca, making his U.S. debut. I think this horse actually could have ran in the Breeders' Cup. So interesting wild card in here. What's your opinion on this horse?
Yeah, with the horse that's like an unknown like this one, and it's tough to go off the form from South America, especially when they're coming off a layoff. So I was able to, luckily, on XBTV, watch the works to kind of get an idea of who this horse is as an individual. And I think there is some intent in this spot and could certainly move up, especially if I think that the favorite's going to be vulnerable. And looking at a new face that has some form, and in terms of watching him work, he's coming into this race fit. We're going to find out where he fits on class, but I think this horse is going to give an honest account of himself. One, I would probably, because I'm not going to, if I was playing like, this is what, late pick 4 or something like that, I would use somewhere. And then depending on kind of what I saw on the track, saw on the board, things like that, I could start to upgrade and downgrade a little bit more.
So you think he is a win contender then, it sounds like?
I would put him in the mix because, again, it's kind of building off the fact that if I'm playing against the 1, I'm going to start. I wouldn't want this horse to beat me.
Do you think he's as likely to win as the 1?
I don't know because this is an unknown. I have no idea.
Okay.
But I know his number is going to be a lot higher.
Yeah, I think he's going to be higher than the 6-1 morning line.
Yeah.
And if he's not, then that probably tells you something right there. Probably some.
That's what I was saying. That like if I'm playing a pick 4, I'm going to use this horse to some extent in like a multi-race sequence. And then when I'm able to look at the horse, look at the board, look at the double wheel pays, try to see if there's a little bit more steam action one way or another, then I could start to upgrade and downgrade in terms of that inner race play.
So when you watch the workout, because most people probably don't watch the workout, what did you see in the workout? It seems like that you saw as positive. What was it you were looking for? What did you see in that workout that kind of got you a little more interested in this horse?
I didn't really see anything positive or negative. I mean, it's a horse that's going to go 12 furlongs on the turf, working on the dirt. Other than the fact that it's a horse that he looks fit. And I'm not seeing anything to knock. I wasn't seeing anything that like made me overwhelmingly love this horse, but not enough to completely put me off.
Got it. All right, so let's go to the next horse, Planetario. This horse, people were kind of high on this horse for a while. It's been a little disappointing. Hasn't really had that breakthrough effort, but it's just curious what you think about this horse. Seems like it fits in here.
Yeah, I think this horse does fit in here. I would say it's weird to say that this is probably the most likely horse because he's most often not very consistent. He's a little bit one pace. He's a little bit plotty, but he's been competitive in graded stakes races. The United Nations this year at Monmouth was a really weak race. I think they were peaked for that race, and he ran well enough. He was coming out of did get the win in the San Juan Capistrano, a grade 3, earned a B+. That would suggest the horse would step up in class. Maybe it just was the timing for whatever reason. But again, the number stayed consistent, came back at Del Mar, raced no cover. That's the key word on there, which the horse is kind of parked outside horses. Parked is a new word I've learned from harness. But you're racing kind of wide, not necessarily wide, but you don't no cover. It's kind of self-explanatory, I guess. That's not always the best trip at Del Mar to kind of stay in that spot, and still earned a solid figure and no real excuse. Just see in the John Henry at last month at Santa Anita. But overall, the grade 3 win with the B+ suggests that this horse should be able to compete at the grade 2 level. I wish I had a little bit more excuse for that last race, but again, maybe it was just a little bit over the top, hadn't recovered. But I think this horse is a contender, long story short.
All right, good. And, that seems like about the right price for that horse. I think he's probably going to be about 5-1.
Yes.
Okay, so let's go on to Astronaut, who's run some good ones, had a long layoff, didn't do much running off the bench. What's your opinion on that horse?
We have a weather note that day. It was that, and kind of an extended comment. It was an odd race in terms of race shape. The front runner kind of spaced out the field. It was a 15-length lead on the final turn. So just kind of one of those races that tough to make anything from. I don't really like the pattern of excessive layoff lines. Sheriffs has had this horse before. The barn overall has been a little bit cold this meet. And in terms of his races, does have a grade 2 win over this course, but did kind of have a favorable trip that day, was in a little bit better form. And tactically, I'm just not sure what this horse is going to do, because he did win on the lead at Aqueduct almost, a year ago to the date. But that was a day that the track bias carried him. But he's had success when he's been on or near the lead. So maybe he's going to press. He's just kind of a weird horse to kind of have a real strong opinion on, but not really negative or positively. I agree, and we kind of talked earlier in terms of a horse that could probably stick around for underneath, and that's kind of where I would leave him in this race.
So what would you make his ceiling? Could he get in the exacta, or is it super?
Yeah, no, I think he can get in the exacta, and probably will drift from the 5-1, I think, especially if we think the 1's going to come down a little bit. Yeah. And then we'll see. I mean, if the 3 takes money, then that could shift as well. But I would probably want a little bit more than 5-1 on this horse, but I think maybe that will be there.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're thinking more playing it underneath than to win, right?
Yes. Yeah.
All right, so let's go to Balladeer, who's been kind of a solid horse. They've been trying to step up in class here recently. Big step up last time in the Breeders' Cup Turf. What do you think of this horse?
Well, this is sort of where I think the tactics of Astronaut kind of come into play, because if they do sit back, Mike Smith taking over for the first time, so I don't know what the plan is. I don't know what the intent for this horse is, making that first start back on the circuit. If they do sit back for whatever reason and not push the pace, there is a scenario where Balladeer is lone. And when he's been lone on the lead, he has been effective. That's how he won the John Henry, kind of got away on the front end, had the track profile in his favor, and maybe got a little bit rewarded there, as he just did not belong in the Breeders' Cup Turf, that grade 1 race. He's just not on that level. So his best case scenario is for Astronaut to sit off and try to take him as far as they can on the front end. I still think he's a legitimate long shot, but if he is lone on the lead, could stick around for underneath.
So what's the ceiling on him? You think you could catch the exacta with the right trip?
With the right trip and with the right price. 4-1 is no value at all. At all. I wouldn't want this horse. I would play against him in those spots at that number, but yeah, I just looked at that. I thought this horse was going to be like 20-1. 4-1 is
that price isn't too enticing. What about the distance too? The horse has only went the distance that one time. Do you think that's a problem with this horse, or is it just more about what trip it gets?
Yeah, I think it's more about trip. I mean, the 12 furlongs last out, he wasn't going to win that race regardless. I think that was just, I don't think the distance mattered. He was just not on that level.
Yeah, it seemed like 60-1 was an underlay.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, next horse, Eastern Ocean. Not a whole lot you can get excited about. Maybe you have something you like about this horse. Just got claimed. Pretty aggressive spot off the claim.
Yeah, I think they'll probably try to take a shot. Maybe he's the one that's going to try to keep the pace honest. Maybe they'll try to go for that same type of trip, just try to get out in front, go as far as they can. And like you said, he's claimed last out. So this is literally taking a shot, right? Nothing to lose. As a horse overall, his class is weak. Mark Glatt was sending out everything live at Santa Anita. So with the hot barn, this horse still wasn't winning those last two races. This is a significant step up in class. There's some prior notes going back that he's kind of more of a one-turn type horse. So not for me. I think he can be completely tossed.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, he does seem like the kind of horse you would toss. All right, what about the morning line favorite? Probably be the second choice at post time, but Speaking Scout. This is a horse I have fond memories of. He's won some money for me in the past. So what do you think about Speaking Scout in here?
Yeah, and kind of the key with that is that Hawthorne Derby race where that was during the Invitational. And so you and I talked about this horse and thought that he was a contender and was actually the morning line favorite that day. But then the betting was so completely weird that he ended up drifting up and was like the best play of the year at 9-2. And yeah, he was very, very successful for you that day as well. So maybe there's a scenario where if he does drift up, he gets into that playable range. I think he's a little bit weak in terms of 5-2. Grand Motion does good work, shipping out to California. So that doesn't concern me. This horse really hasn't shown much in terms of distance and stamina. So that gives me some pause in terms of like a reservation, again, at a short price in this race. Hernandez has been aboard in the past and on the circuit. Has experience over this course, did win the Hollywood Derby as well. So there's the class on his side, has that experience, but those other just kind of subtle knocks at being a short price. The front wraps have been added in those last couple races. That's always, a little bit of a concern as well, in my opinion, in terms of form cycle and just form overall. So he was one that at a short price, I was not excited. Maybe he drifts, maybe his post-time visuals upgrade a little bit, but I was kind of lukewarm on him as the favorite.
All right, you think he's a contender though? I mean, to win, just don't like the price?
I mean, let me go through. Who do I really have as a contender? I have like one horse is basically like a contender.
These are the ones I thought you said had a chance to win.
Every horse in this race has a chance to win.
Well, but I mean, in terms of the legitimate contenders, I think you had the one, didn't like the value. You thought the 3 was a wild card.
No. The one I'm against. Like I'm taking a stand against this horse. Like, yeah, I know you like this horse a lot, and he's a single for you. But I'm negative on this.
No, I'm just trying to, in terms of the likelihood of winning. I mean, he's probably.
Yeah, I gave him a 20% chance.
Right. So he's a contender to win. I mean, he had a 20% chance to win, right? So, and you had, I think you said Planetario you thought was a win.
Yeah, that's what I was going through, just kind of looking at like in terms of not necessarily contender, but more of like the kind of quote unquote like ABC. He kind of seems like right now the lone A.
the Planetario, you think he's probably the one that's the most likely to win?
The most likely to play. I don't really understand like the most likely to win versus most likely to play.
Well, you said Francesco Clement has a 20% chance to win.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing to do with price. What do you think the chance of Planetario of winning? Is it more or less than 20%?
What if I think it's the same?
That's fine. That's great. So that
exactly. So that's where I'm going. That's where I'm going off of.
Yeah, you see those two as contenders. What about Speaking Scout? Do you think he is likely to win or less likely to win than those two?
I put him a little bit. I put him less likely.
All right. And then what about Luca? Is he less likely than those, or
we have no idea?
That no one's just a wild card. Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, what would is there? Am I missing something other than wild card?
No. I'm just trying to kind of suss out. So, based on that, to me, you see three horses as sort of the primary contenders.
Well, let me go back to kind of what I was saying earlier in terms of like eliminating to kind of narrow out to kind of close out the noise. Because I could see the 1 winning, I could see the 8 winning, I could see a scenario where the 5 finds his best day, Astronaut, Balladeer gets low on the late. Like there's scenarios for all those horses. But in terms of like if I'm trying to like clear out the noise, I have Knox on the 1. I'm not using that horse. He can win. He has a contender chance to win. He's not playable to me. Kind of two separate things. Speaking Scout, probably the same thing. Like I'm lukewarm on him. Certainly win, but some things that I don't like at a short price, knowing that those are kind of horses that people are going to gravitate towards. Probably upgrade Astronaut a little bit more, especially because I don't know what I was thinking on the 6. I just kind of just assumed that horse is going to be 2-1. That horse is not playable at 4-1. He's out. The 4 is a use. The 2 is a toss, or maybe he's not even going to win. The 7 is a toss. So basically what I've eliminated is I'm not using the 1. I'm not using the 2. I'm not using the 6, the 7, or the 8. So now I have 3, 4, 5. That's what I've left. That's what I'm working with.
Right. And of those 3, 4, 5 is from a win perspective. You think Planetario's definitely more likely to win? And you're
3.
Getting about the same price as you will with the other. So he's probably your key horse in there.
Yes.
And, he's a possible win bet at 5-1, it sounds like.
Yes.
So that's kind of good. So, I mean, to me, that's a pretty solid opinion. I mean, if you're right and you're getting
all those factors being what they are on race day, which we don't know. Right.
But I do, my guess is, that you're probably going to get close to that price. So it seems like there's, but you always have to wait and see.
Yeah.
But as a win bet, and then let's talk a little bit about the vertical exotics, because you've got 3 and 5 both probably offer a little bit of value. So,
Yeah, but I where I'm negative. This is where it gets tricky, right? Because where I would be a little bit more negative on like the 1 and the 8 in terms of trying to beat them on the win end. They're definitely logical to run 2nd or 3rd.
So you're thinking maybe in this, so Planetario, you can lean on him, maybe play to win, maybe single or key him in picks, but you're not excited about trying to play the verticals in here because you're afraid the favorites might be a little, you're not going to get any value with him over one of those two. So,
we don't have, it's so hard to talk about doing like the vertical, those type of exotic bets, like without having a board, without having visuals, without looking at the will pays, right? Because I could try to get them out if like I saw like a Planetario Luca, or a Planetario Astronaut Exacta was paying something, was an overlay, then all of a sudden I'd be like, I'll take a shot on those horses running out.
Yeah, I think you'd be pretty confident that you're going to get a big price. If you get Speaking Scout and Francesco Clement, the 1 and the 8 out of the Exacta, it's going to pay. I mean, Planetario over Astronaut or Luca, there's, if given your opinion, to me, there's value there. I'd be really shocked if it wasn't.
Yeah. You've got to get the value. You've got to get lucky, because those horses could run in, and we could be talking about. We could be kind of wasting our time. Let's say Planetario scratches. It's so hard to do what we're doing ahead of time. There's so many moving pieces. That's why when we see like a lot of the bets come in at the last minute. That's when you have the most amount of information. We have a good amount of information right now. We don't have the most.
Yeah, but it does seem likely that, based on your opinion, I think you will get a playable price on Planetario. So, I mean,
really,
to me,
but really what my opinion is not Planetario. I need to make that very clear. My opinion is not that I like Planetario. My opinion is I'm playing against the 1. I'm playing against the 8. I think everybody else is a little bit weak. This horse has the edge over those. That's why I wasn't like crazy about this race altogether. But like by process of elimination, I think this horse's becomes playable. My opinion is, I think the 1 is going to be overbet. Some questions on the 8. And then the rest of the field, I'm handicapping. Planetario has the advantage.
So,
but my opinion is based on horses that I'm choosing to eliminate.
Yeah, and that's a pretty strong opinion if you're taking the 2 favorites out. It certainly seems like, you're going to be able to find some wagers either as a win bet or in picks, where if you're eliminating those 2 favorites, you're getting some value if you're right about that. Of course, they could win. I mean, but we're talking long term.
Yeah, I would lose no sleep if Speaking Scout or Francisco Clemente wins. No sleep is lost. Turn the page. There's a big card at Churchill on Saturday, so I'll be all right.
Right, and that's all you can do is try to find that value, and then stick to your opinion. If you think they're the 1 and the 8 are big underlays, don't play him in the picks, or use them defensively. Like you said, take them off the board in terms of the wagering. That's where you're going to get the value, because you're right. That's your strongest opinion for sure in this race. And that's opinion worth leveraging, if you can get the 2 favorites out. All right. So is there any other races at Del Mar that you want to talk about, or do you want to go to the Churchill races on Saturday?
Yeah, let's go to the Churchill races on Saturday.
All right. So which one do you want to start with at Churchill?
Let's see. What did we talk about? 7 and 8?
I think that's what you said. 7 and 8. So you want to start with 7 or start with 8? Which one?
Let's start with 7. We'll go in.
All right. We'll start with the 7th. That's an allowance optional claimer. This is like a 2-year-old card. I think they do this quite often at Churchill, where they, it's like a future stars card or something. So I think almost every race on here is all 2-year-olds, and there's a lot of stakes in the back end. But this one's just an allowance optional claimer for 2-year-olds going a mile, big field, and a lot of lightly raced horses. So a handicapping puzzle. So let's start off with this one.
Do you want to start? Let's start with the horses that, since we have the morning line, that are going to take the most action: the 5, the 2, and the 8.
All right, so we'll start with whichever one you want. Which horse you want to get started with?
We'll go a number there. 2. We'll go 2, 5, 8. So
all right.
This is part of my process as well in terms of handicapping, and especially playing live. Is it just starts with assessing the favorite, because that's going to tell you, what your play is going to be. If it's a playable race, a passable race, a strong favorite that you can single on. So that's why I was kind of going in that direction. So again, with plot, there's 2-year-old races. A lot of the horses in here don't have data. They're lightly race types, could be doing something new. But starting with number 2, Bergen, broke their maiden on debut at Keeneland. back on October 7th, made a wide move from the outside, but was a little bit flow aided that day. And again, earned a B optics grade. Seeing this horse step up in class, it just looks like a horse that has capable, but has some challenges at the same time. So I would be looking elsewhere, knowing that's a horse that's going to get a lot of attention, especially Brad Cox, Flavian Pratt, won from the 12 posts last out. Trying to remember that race off the top of my head, like in terms of strength. There is a horse, Vesture, that's coming out of that race that'll be running either if he can draw in on Saturday. If not, he looks pretty solid on Sunday. But the rest of that race, we kind of have to see. So in terms of kind of assessing that horse as a favorite, I'm going to look elsewhere. Might come back to him if I have knocks at everybody else, but so far he's just kind of soft. Number 5, and go ahead.
What is it that why do you consider it soft, the horse sort of soft? Just because first time going the distance, or?
No, I don't. I'm less concerned about that. He had a slightly favorable flow scenario to break his maiden first out, and he earned a B grade, and he's stepping up in class. That race, he's going to have to improve off of. There's other horses in here that are faster, so this horse could easily step forward in a second start, but you're taking a short price that maybe he doesn't. So those are the factors. The extra 2 furlongs, sure, that is a little bit of an unknown. These are certainly capable connections. There was nothing about that race that kind of suggested to me he's a sprinter. So that the distance, less of a concern, more the fact that he had a favorable trip winning first out, hasn't raced in 49 days, and is going to have to improve.
All right. Sounds good. So you're willing to maybe try to beat that horse as one of the favorites. And let's go to the 5, that Informed Patriot, that this horse has been the distance.
He has. He lacked a finish on October 29th. Now, granted, that's a higher level and off track. But the barn was sending out live runners. It was scratched down to a 5-horse field. The winner did come from off the pace. The no finish is a negative. Just in general, we key a lot of the optics keywords will be green or red. He has the no finish is a red. We've done the analytics on that to say that's a negative factor going forward. So those are things just at a short price that I'm going, maybe he just doesn't have the finish. There are some other horses in here that can race on or near the lead. That pace was fast. I think this horse is fine. He's improving speed figures race to race, finding some class relief. But with those red keywords, that gives me some slight reservation at a short price.
All right. So that's another favorite where you think maybe is vulnerable. So let's go. What was the next one you wanted to talk about?
The 8.
The 8. Okay.
Yeah.
The 8 horse coming off a big race.
Yeah, a big race. And that was a big effort. That B+ optics grade, 94 optics figure. I believe that 94 is the co-highest number speed figure in this race, but he's going to wheel back in 13 days. Again, mentioned kind of the pace scenario. There's some other horses that want to be on or near the lead, going a distance of ground, going a lot further. So some regression. The regression would be my concern with the quick turnaround and off that new top.
Yeah, and McPeak kind of has, he's not afraid to wheel him back quickly and stuff. It doesn't always work. He's one of the few trainers that will, run his horses back, even his best horses, pretty quickly.
Well, I mean, the other thing to consider too is the calendar in this case, right? Because there'll be 3-year-olds within a month, and it's kind of like you can run in the spot and then reset and figure out where you're going to go in the 3-year-old seasons. He sends horses to Oaklawn. He sends horses to Fairground. If this horse is good, getting them the experience, coming back on short rest. And that's part of the reason too, why they don't have to win. They're not looking for this race is the end all be all if they think this horse is the goods. So yeah, like you said, this barn is known to kind of take a shot, but also it's kind of a spot where they can take a shot and they have nothing to lose because they're just going to reset going into next year.
So you've got the 3 favorites you think all, could win, but they're no standouts. So let's start looking at some of the others where you're going to potentially get a price that you think could contend.
Yeah. So the horse that I think is interesting in here is the 7 Barksdale. Barksdale broke his maiden at Horseshoe, Indianapolis, but broke his maiden on debut around 2 turns. So I know it's not the strongest circuit, but that still takes some ability. A horse has to have some ability in order to do that. And he was alone on the lead, but he set a pretty solid pace from start to finish. And I thought that race was taxing. I didn't take it necessarily as a negative, but the type of race that the horse would need time to recover from. And they actually had considered running this horse in the street sets. And that was like too quick of a turnaround. Broke his maiden on October 4th. The street sense was on October 29th, less than 30 days, coming back on too short a rest. They decided to not run that day. They ran on November 9th, so a little bit more time between starts, that 36 days. This horse had, probably to be fair, an excuse. He had legit trouble at the start in that allowance race, rushed up into a very fast pace, rushed up wide into a very fast early pace, was part of that early duel against the flow before losing ground. So I'm willing to kind of draw a line through that. Number-wise, he's not as fast as some of the others in this field, but you can project that there might be a little bit more for this horse, especially if they have had intentions to run him in a grade 3 race, that he broke his maiden first out, has that excuse last out. They're coming back in this spot. Santana is more familiar with the circuit. No knocks at Alex Ishard, but he rides primarily at Horseshoe, Indianapolis as his first circuit. So I think there's a little bit more on this horse. And with some of those other horses the short price horses that could win, but have some reservations, I thought this horse was as solid as every other horse in the race, and one that we might not have seen the best of yet.
Yeah, and you'll get a really big price on that horse.
Absolutely.
I mean, that horse is going to be a monster price. So that's, that horse could light the toad if it runs well. And the figures, your optics figures are, like you said, quite a bit slower, but that was its first time starting, and you're just saying, hey, it could really improve off of that first start.
Yeah, why not? Because he hasn't had the chance to do so. Given the excuse last out, he hasn't had a chance. One of the horses that ran in that October 4th race, horse called Tizzy Indy, came back at Churchill in a maiden 20. So it's not. I'm not trying to bring it up from that class standpoint, but Tizzy Indy in that October 4th race ran a 60 optics figure and came back and ran a 78 optics figure in that maiden 20 in order to win. So that being an 18-point improvement, if Barksdale puts an 18-point improvement off the 75 optics figure, he's a contender.
At a big price.
At a big price.
All right. So, and some other contenders in there that you are interested in that you want to talk about?
I mean, I feel kind of like Tommy Hammer. If I'm like, I love a horse at a price, I'm not trying to water it down in any way. So, yeah, I mean, you could start making cases for kind of everybody else, but I feel like that horse is kind of the most interesting in here, the least exposed, and you've mentioned it a couple times, is going to be a big price.
Yeah, so that's definitely one that you could play in a lot of different ways. So how would you, given that the wide open nature of the race, do you just play it to win?
I think, yeah, I mean, this is the type of horse that you'd want to have in everything possible if you give him a chance to win at a big price. Key him in your exotics. You can use some of those other horses that are a little bit more logical. And then in terms of your multi-race, I mean, he's a strong single. If that horse, starts something, he's a middle leg, you want to make sure that it's ending on that horse, using him in every way possible, because if you're right, you want to make sure that, again, like you said, you're maximizing that opinion.
So are there any other, just because the potential here, you've mentioned kind of the 3 favorites in him, are there any other price horses that you might hook him up with in the verticals in this race? I mean, or is it just pretty much you throw a blanket over the rest? But were there any other?
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of separation in here. I think the 2 horses that if I'm discussing this race in whole that I have to mention, Number 1, Who Day, is the one that has that co-favored 94 optics figure. But he's another horse that he's going to come back on short rest. That was a big, that race was really strong. The stakes race at Mahoning Valley. That horse overcame significant trouble. That race should have been a complete excuse. This is a really good horse. I just don't know where he's going to stack up at this level and coming back in less than 30 days from a race that most horses would have spit the bit, 3 furlongs in. Like his trouble was legitimate and overcame that. So little bit of a concern there. The 1-turn mile has the rail, but that horse has some ability, and I think the connections too are also finding out. Nick Storm, number 6, he earned a strong speed figure, 87 optics figure. I don't know what it is on everything else, but typically our numbers aren't too much of an outlier, so I'm sure it's fast on everything else. That was a maiden, a higher level maiden claiming races. Those races have kind of a lower race par all around. It was a favorable ride. Got off a little bit slow, rushed up. Colebrook was sending out live runners at the time. So that's something that to me is a little bit of a downgrade, because if he's sending out live runners, that horse probably came with a top effort. And I'm not sure if he's able to repeat that effort, he's going to come back. And visual suggested that there might even be some regression. He has had 38 days, so that's a kind of enough time. The barn had, looking at the hot note, Barn had 2 wins on the card. He was dominant in that race, but again, it's a step up in class, earned a B, would want to see a little bit more. So those are the other reasons why I had some knocks on those horses, and then everybody else pretty much looks the same.
All right, well, Barksdale, that horse is really interesting at a potentially really big, in this big of a field, that horse could get completely lost. So definitely an intriguing possibility there from a betting standpoint. All right, so you want to move on to the 8th race then, the next race. This one is a maiden race. Again, another 2-year-old race going a mile and 16th, 2 turns. So a lot of lightly raced horses again in here, even more so than last race. So how do you want to tackle this one? You want to start with, which horse do you want to start with in here?
Well, really kind of my opinion was, again, starting with the horses that I think are going to be favored in here. Number 7, Track Phantom, and number 11, Top Gun Rocket. As far as Track Phantom, improving numbers. So from that standpoint, he fits on speed. Optics grades, he's paired up B minuses, which despite having those good numbers is still not showing enough to be that winning type effort. On debut, that October 1st race, had the race flow. Barn's still a little bit cold, but then lacked finish last out. This horse could certainly win, has those numbers on his side, has the experience, has early speed. Looking at optics plot, he looks very dominant in that spot, big square in quadrant 1. There's no knocks other than the fact that maybe class, that lack of finish, we'll see. That could be enough in there that just kind of makes me a little bit gun shy, or maybe at least just opens the door to try to get creative in here. Number 11, Top Gun Rocket. Now, he did record a B optics grade for his debut back on September 22nd, but the keyword that day was sprinter. And that is noted because if this was a 1-turn mile, maybe I'd let that be a pass. But the fact that this is 2 turns and we have that keyword that says sprinter, number-wise, didn't really improve in that second start with a little bit more ground. I was a little bit more negative on. I would play against Top Gun Rocket a little bit more for that factor in this race. So again, just kind of looking at that, starting there. As far as number 6, Lat Long, kind of another one that he's fine. B- optics grade, so not quite shown enough. Not really had much excuse, and is kind of coming back. I feel like he's kind of shown who he is, and I wanted to look at horses that maybe have a little bit more upside. The one Stop the Press is interesting to me. Took a lot of money on debut, made a very positive physical appearance, and then he had a warm up, which I don't love. I think that's a negative factor. Had some trouble at the start, showed run making a move, coming back in the spot. I think there's a lot more to show. Gaffleon's been riding very well this meet. That horse is very interesting to me because it's a horse we probably haven't seen the best of yet. Number 3, Mr. Faversham. He took kickback on debut, which is a positive factor going forward, and then finished with a pretty strong close and a good closing kick. He wasn't going to catch the winner that day. The field was kind of spaced out behind. Con 8 was the winner of that race. So I think both those horses have a little bit more upside. Stop the Press, I thought, was maybe a little bit more favorable.
And both Stop the Press and Mr. Faversham could be pretty good prices. What about one horse that I caught my eye a little bit in that was the 5 D-Day Sky? What's your opinion on that one?
The drop keyword last out kind of made me a little bit more hesitation just in terms of class. But he ran fine last out. I wouldn't, if you were negative on the favorites, I wouldn't be so, I wouldn't talk off a double-digit price, but that was just kind of one that I have some class concerns.
So
Wilkes has been sending out live runners, so that's a positive, which he didn't in the prior Churchill meet.
So this one seems kind of wide open in your opinion. The favorites don't look that much better than some of the other horses, like the 1 and the 3, Stop the Press and Mr. Faversham.
Yeah.
So from a betting standpoint, how would you tackle this one?
I mean, if you're using the big 20 to 1, if that horse is a big price, having some coverage here is probably key. And then if Stop the Press being kind of the main opinion, probably be a little bit more heavy on that combination. Because if you're right, you want to, get the most out of it. And if not, you have some insurance in here. But I would lean on Stop the Press a little bit more, especially at 10 to 1. I'm not sure if he will be, just because he took money on debut. But yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, you could have 150, 200 to 1 daily double there.
Yeah.
With the 1 and the.
And that to me is a good bet, win or lose.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna, given your feeling that horse is really live in the prior race, there's lots of value there. And like you said, you might not want to get too cute in here. Who else would you use? I mean, you could kill it with the 1, but if the 7, I'm assuming you'd bet it to win too. So you're going to already have a cash to win bet, but there's probably some other horses you'd want to use in the double, right? With that horse in this race?
Yeah. I think you would spread. I mean, if you're saying like, okay, if those 2 favorites have the chance to run out, then the 5th best horse in this race could win. A horse like your 5 could certainly, why not, right? He fits right in there. Track Phantom, I think would probably be a little bit safer. Again, Top Gun Rocket, just because of that one keyword and not improving numbers, I'd probably use Track Phantom over Top Gun Rocket. But yeah, I wouldn't mind making creative cases. Horse like Domingo, who had traffic, already has experience around 2 turns. Why can't he step forward off that debut? You can get creative in here.
Yeah, Domingo debut was on the turf, and Brendan Walsh actually likes this move where he goes from the turf to the dirt, and that horse is pretty. I like.
I mean, yeah, why not?
Yeah. Like you said, there's a few horses like if you get past Track Phantom, it does seem like there's a lot
and Lat Long. Those 2 horses are capable, but it's like we've seen them. We've seen what they can do, and they're going to be used a lot because they feel like they're kind of safe.
Yeah, the one thing that on Track Phantom is he's got a lot of speed. Do you see anything in here that's going to go with him early? I mean, they certainly, they could easily send somebody right to pressure him. That's one little concern.
Yeah, I mean, looking at Optics Plot, a couple things. I mean, he's a lone E, but you have lightly raced runners that are, stretching out. So who knows? Right. Because the quadrant 1 is still contentious with the sun. So 2, 4, 8, 10, even 11 is up there. 6 and 9 aren't far off. But Track Phantom, the 7, has the dominant position above those. He's furthest left, so quicker to the first call. They're all pretty much in the same parallel line in terms of like second call, the y-axis. but he's a big square. So he has much more finishing ability.
Yeah, he could be the real deal, but he, like you said, you don't know for sure. And there's a lot of these horses have huge upside that you've talked about.
Yeah.
All right. So any other race on the Churchill card that you want to talk about? Any of the stakes races where there's you had any opinion?
I didn't think I was too creative in there, but just like real quick, since we're here, we can touch on them. I wrote up this full card on the Hawthorne site. So I wrote it out a little bit more, and I went from race 1 to race 11. The only race I really didn't have a super strong opinion in, and I wrote it as such, is race 9. I think that is one of the most competitive races. I can't toss or love any horse in that race. But as far as the goldenrod, Central Avenue, to me, 5-1. I don't know if that sticks, but I think that horse is pretty solid in here. Coming out of the Frizette, just FYI, when the Breeders' Cup fillies out of that race, and Central Avenue ran a really good race. I mean, I would have played her in the Breeders' Cup if they went there. Made a big close, big gallop out. She continued to handle the added ground, has the class on her side. As far as the other horses that are kind of the quote unquote main contenders based on the morning line, West Sunset, she's very good. Improving numbers, but in the rags to riches, that was the time. Looked like she was an improving type, had a B+ optics grade in the debut, projected she could move forward in the next start. And I think the one horse that she had to beat in there was a horse that came from off the pace that had some trouble, was a Kin McPeak horse. I don't have the name, but I know the horse is 1-9. And West Sunset was the value of the race that day. Less value today. Torpedo Anna, another horse that is good too, has paired up B+ optics grade from the debut, from the allowance, but that allowance was 15 days ago and has the keyword regress. So that gives me a little bit pause that, especially listed as the morning line favorite, I think this horse is very good. This horse has some regression. It opens it up. And Central Avenue, to me, especially if she's the third choice, seems like value.
Yeah, Torpedo Anna's kind of the poster child for McPeak, with a really good horse where he maybe tries to squeeze a little too hard. I mean, this horse ran back quickly, in its second start. Now it's running back again. 3 starts in a month nowadays, especially for a 2-year-old filly. That's unusual. And seems like, that you talked about regress, that this does seem like a horse that's going to regress. Now, she's a really good horse and she may still win, but it does seem like the kind of horse you want to sort of take a shot against, right?
Well, and even looking at the numbers, right? Looking at optics figures, she ran an 88 on debut, a 90 for the allowance win. West Sunset has already run a 93. Central Avenue, 91 in the Frizette. There's 2 horses that are faster than her. So she'd have to not only run back on short rest off of potential regress, but also be faster. Maybe she's that good, but she's going to have to prove it. And at a short price, I will find out.
Yeah, I do think she will be a short price. The one other horse in there I thought was, could consider, I agree with you on Central Avenue, was the 2 Intricate. What are your thoughts on that horse?
Yeah, I have no knocks on this horse either. Debut was really good. That 5th place finish, even though it's a 5th place finish, doesn't look too crazy on paper. Still earned a B- optics grade. The top 3 were together at the wire. The next 3 were right behind, and then has that B+ optics grade from a maiden race. That suggests the horse can step up in class. This is a pretty considerable step up in class. But there wasn't much pace that day, and she had to overcome that. It's a gap back to place. She's good. She's going to have to improve a little bit. Hasn't really shown that progression race to race, so would want some compensation. But why not?
So you whizzed past the 9th race because you said it was very contentious. But to me, that's a pretty strong opinion, because I think Booth, the 9 horse, might be the shortest price on the card. So if you think that horse is vulnerable, it seems like there's something.
I don't think it's
that
vulnerable.
9th race.
Yeah, I don't know if I necessarily think it's vulnerable. Maybe I just kind of like, what were my thoughts on that? I guess I just kind of had mixed feelings as far as the debut, because it was a strong number, 98 optics figure, strongest in this field, but there's some others that are pretty close. B+ optics grade, so could certainly step up in class, but had an easy lead and was lone. And it doesn't look like, looking at this race shape, that this horse is going to be lone. There's a lot of other horses in here that have shown speed, and they're drawn to his inside. So that, maybe he's the fastest horse and the best horse in the race, but not going to get a similar trip to that first out. And this is a competitive group. There's horses in here that have run good races.
I like that, because this horse, it sort of trounced Nash in that debut, who came back and looked like Secretariat in its next start. So I think this horse is going to get completely hammered. So if you do think it's vulnerable, this horse could be 2-5, I think, the 9. So, to me, if you can beat that horse, that opens up a lot of value. The horse might be really good, but the fact you think it's vulnerable, or at least no lock, it makes this kind of interesting race. I would like to get your take on that. You do the notes for, let me see. Let me pull this up for 1 second. You do so many tracks, so I'm wondering if you do the note. So yeah, you do in Indiana. You do the notes for that, right?
I gave up doing the notes for Horseshoe Indianapolis to move to shift to Kentucky. But what I will do is, if a horse like Molly's Town, for example, that was running at Horseshoe Indianapolis, I'm going to go back and watch that race and fill it in for Churchill.
Because
does that make sense?
Yeah, that last race was almost comical. It was like the rider did everything he could. Like, he looked like he was trying to stiff the horse the entire race, and the horse just wouldn't have it. Horse was just so much better than the rest. It kept pulling him forward. It was comically a bad ride, and the horse was just towered over that bunch. Now, he hasn't beaten anything, but this horse has just crushed every field. It keeps beating the same horse over and over again. That good-looking Justice or whatever. But I don't know much about this horse, but I'll tell you, that race was something, really something, his last race.
I'm pretty conservative in terms of giving out like A's or A minuses, and this horse earned an A- for that. Because, I think, you or I could have been aboard. That horse was like not losing. It was ridiculous. And there has been some intention to run here. They did enter an allowance. The racetrack came up sloppy on October 29th. So maybe this is kind of the second, they weren't necessarily pointing to this race necessarily, but at least kind of running to the circuit. Distance-wise is about the same. That was a 7 furlong race, and this being 6.5. But we'll find out how good this horse is. But, this horse clearly has ability.
Yeah, it'd be real interesting to see, it's stepping up against much better horses here. But just that last race, if people want to take the time to watch the replay, it was like this jockey was doing everything he could to lose the race, and no matter what he tried, the horse was going to win easily. It was just funny to watch. Maybe
it is worth watching, just if you haven't seen it, just to watch how. If you want to see how much the best horse, that's it.
Yeah, that horse much the best. So anyway, if you can beat Booth, maybe have and hook it up with and beat Torpedo Anna. Those two in succession, you could get a great double and picks there. Because I think those are both going to be, Booth will be just really heavily bet. I think Torpedo Anna is going to be a heavy favorite too, not quite the same extent. So it seems like there's some opportunity there. Any other race you want to talk about in this sequence?
I think I could talk about this all day, but I do have to go otherwise. But like I said, I wrote up all the races for Saturday because I thought it was kind of a fun card, especially these horses that are lightly raced that, could be, we might have seen the best, and some horses we haven't seen the best of. So anyways, all 12 are up at Hawthorne free of charge. Great.
And so if people want us to get access to that, they go to the Hawthorne website. Is that?
Yeah, just go to the Hawthorne, hawthorneracecourse.com, and then under, I think, selections, and then that takes you to the Betting Hawthorne handicapping page. And I pretty much have something up there Wednesday through Sunday. And then all the data, everything that, basically all I'm doing is writing that up, is basically looking at optics, doing the analysis, right? You have the data in front of you, you have the analytics, and then just being able to understand it and process it. So optics EQ, I am a little bit biased, but if there's anything about this that we don't like, we change to make it better. Best tool, everything you need for handicapping is there.
So I'll give you I'm trying to think of how to say it. So anyway, that's great. Yeah, and I'll give a plug for
what
optics.
Are you gonna say?
No,
I'm curious.
I just want to plug optics. It does, the plot is definitely a unique way to look at the race. The notes are great, and I'd say you probably watch more replays than anybody on the planet.
I've probably watched more races this week than most people have watched this year, and I don't say that in a brag way, because if you do this type of work, that how hard and tedious and tough that is to do, which is part of why we provide it, because watching a race does have some skill level, to be able to be a good race watcher. Steve Davidowitz wrote about that in Betting Thoroughbreds, being the ability to be able to watch a race and be able to understand what you're seeing in terms of how to use that going forward. Anyone can say, oh, that horse was wide. Well, what does that mean going forward, right? To be able to make that separation does take some skill, but really, it's time consuming, right? Part of why I got to go is because I got races to watch.
Yeah.
I know how long that takes.
You also have some contests this weekend at Hawthorne, right?
Yes. Yeah. The big Thanksgiving tournament. So it's 3 one-day tournaments, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, live money. Friday's $300, no entry fee. So it's a $300 bankroll, essentially, betting card. You can play any race, any bet you want. I think we're the only tournament. Are we the only tournament that allows that? Pretty much everything that's running that day. I think that the cutoff is at a certain point, maybe the last race or so at Del Mar. Or Golden Gate is the last, but you can play anything. And then Saturday and Sunday, $500, same rules apply. There's seats available plus NHC seats plus the $1 million bonus if you qualify through Hawthorne to go to the NHC, and then you end up winning the NHC as well.
So let's say you're in the contest, Emily. You've got $300. You can play it on any race, any way. Of the races we talked about, what would be your contest play?
I did a lot of the BCBC coverage with ITP, and he really emphasized a lot as far as keeping things simple. So, and when I've done a lot of talking to people about and seeing the results of what it takes to win the tournaments at Hawthorne, it's typically maximizing one opinion, whether that's Matt Miller hitting a cold $500 double and that being enough, Justin Mastari hitting a big trifecta, the big push, bet versus trying to grind. And ITB said the same thing, keep it simple. His first play would be that entire bankroll on a horse. If he lost, that would be it. If it wasn't, that strategy would continue. Versus trying to, kind of $50 here, et cetera. So I've taken that to heart. Execution wise, I haven't really been in a position to execute it, but that would be what I would do. I would get out of my own way and I would punch the opinion that I thought was the best. That would get me the win.
So for the races we had, would that be like Barksdale?
Yeah.
That's probably where you would go?
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't, punch it in ahead of the day and then go leave and go shopping or something. I'd want to be there and make sure I'm getting the number and I like what I'm seeing on the horse. But if all those things kind of checked out and I even visually, the other horses that I had some questions on, I didn't like what I was seeing, then I would have no problem making that a key play.
All right. Well, I'm definitely going to be putting some money on Barksdale. I like your thinking on that one, and he's going to be a big price. And you don't have to twist my arm to get me to play a horse at a big price that has a shot, especially if someone like Emily is touting the horse. So I like that. And good luck to everybody in the contest. And So we're recording this. It's early for me, not quite as early for you. On Thanksgiving morning. What are your plans for Thanksgiving? Are you just going to be at the track, or do you have any holiday plan beyond the racing this weekend?
No, it's just this is racing. This is a big racing weekend. Mentioned notes. I'm doing notes for 4 tracks today: Churchill, Fairgrounds, Del Mar, Woodbine. Woodbine's a twilight post, so it's gonna be a long day, and that'll go right into tomorrow, and then I'll be up at one of the many OTBs tomorrow, kind of hanging out during the tournament.
That's crazy. You're crazy, Emily. You must never
Again,
sleep.
like I said, it's not a brag. I definitely don't want it to come up as a brag. And if anybody that wants to, do notes and is interested, get in touch with me and let's talk. We're always looking for people that want to take notes, that are good note takers to bring onto the team. It's not easy.
Oh no, it's hard work, and it really is a skill you have to develop. I'm sure some people are naturally better than others, but there's people who've watched thousands of races and really still don't know what to look for. So
absolutely, we see that with the stewards all the time.
I'm not convinced they actually watch the races myself. I think sometimes they're playing gin rummy or something during the card. I don't know. That's the only way I can explain some of the decisions they make. But yeah. All right. Well, thank you. I'm gonna let you go, Emily. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun. Hopefully, so the listeners will get some insight, not so much about these races, but kind of how you approach it, and how to think about the handicapping side as well as the betting side. They're both really important. So, thanks. Good luck. Enjoy the weekend. Have some turkey at Club Hawthorne somewhere today, and hopefully Barksdale will come through for us on Saturday.
Let's hope. I'd like to look smart.
Well, you sound smart, and the results are good, but it's the long-term results we're focused on. Any particular race may or may not come out well, but if you can have a horse like Barksdale that legitimately has a chance at a big price long-term, you might lose a lot more often than you win, but long-term you come out way ahead. So that's what you're looking for in this game for sure. Bye-bye, everybody. May you boldly go where no horse player has gone before.